Welcome back, everyone, to our very exciting episode today with Victoria Cortez. She is a licensed therapist, and she is going to walk us through some really interesting things and very unique things to the Latino community, to first generation. So very excited to have her on today. Victoria, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to dig into some really cool topics. And the first, I'm going to start with the hard hitting questions. What is your definition of a first generation feeler?
So, a first gen feeler is a term that I actually coined myself. And that is one who is part of the first generation in their family to actively pursue their own healing, feel their emotions, and or break unhealthy generational patterns that have been passed down for generations. When I started First Gen Feeler, it was actually a side project. So it's before I even started my private practice. And I kept having these conversations that were just very repetitive with colleagues about being the first and the map that our parents gave us to navigate life sort of ending and having to figure things out through the guilt and shame. So I was like, you know what? We're just feeling a lot of feelings. And so I came up with this term and I loved it. And so I was like, let me just run with it. But that's a first gen feeler.
I love that analogy of the map ends, right? Most of us are sons and daughters of immigrants, and they had a map all of their own in their country of origin, and they come to the States, and, it's a new experience for them. Sometimes we forget they're living life for the first time, too. So it's really interesting to look at it from that lens. It's a map, and then it's up to us as that first generation to build our own map and our own set of beliefs. On that topic, I know sometimes, coming to the States, we experience things differently. We might be at a friend's home that isn't Latino, and the way that they relate to their parents or their families, it can feel so foreign to us, specifically boundaries. I think
Yes.
sometimes as Latinos and, sons and daughters of immigrants, we're so hesitant to put up a boundary. But in your experience, what do people think boundaries are? What is the misconception? And what actually are boundaries?
I'm so happy you asked this because this misconception exists that a boundary is a barrier. People tell me, "Oh no, Victoria, I got great boundaries. I like put my hand up and I, armed them out." And I'm like, "No, that's actually not what a boundary is. A boundary is less of a barrier and it's more of a bridge. This is me letting you know this is what I feel comfortable with, and also the other person's going to share what they feel comfortable with. And it's this bridge where we get to meet each other in safety because at the root of it, that's what boundaries are about. It's about feeling safe enough to continue to cultivate a relationship with someone else."
I love the way you put that so beautifully. It's, there's a difference between a barrier and a bridge, and we're trying to build these bridges to, better our relationship. So I really love that. It's beautiful the way you mentioned the difference between a boundary and a barrier and a bridge, right? So we don't want to create barriers. Our goal is to create those bridges for us to continue communicating and understanding each other. You've also mentioned that learning boundaries is like learning a completely new language for us Latinos. Why is that? Why is it that learning your boundaries is something so foreign to us?
It's because I think that we've been shown how to set a boundary by people who aren't of our culture. And so we hear a lot of things online, right? We're scrolling and I set a boundary with my mother. I told her no, right? I have a Mexican mom. Like, if I were to tell my mom just straight using that language, I'm setting my boundary, mom. She would have some words for me, right? And I might flinch a little, but like, I'm not going to pull that. It's a completely different language because context matters. And also our culture. We are a very collectivistic culture. So when we think about how we are a village, right? Setting boundaries can feel scary for a lot of our family members. It's, "Oh, you're pushing me away." They don't understand that I'm actually bringing you closer to me because we're discussing my needs. I want to know your needs too, right? Because it's a two-way street. This is a completely different language, and how we put it within our own family is also going to be different. It's going to sound at first scary because somebody might perceive it as I'm pushing you away from me. I don't want to spend time with you, right? For an example, time is a boundary too, right? Some people we can spend 10 minutes with them, some of them we can spend days.
Yeah.
And while we don't necessarily need to tell somebody, "Oh, I can't spend all day with you," we can recognize within ourselves what our limits are and say, "Oh, you know what? I do want to spend time with you, but I only have an hour that day. Is that okay? Or we can spend longer on Saturday because I'll have more energy to share," right? For somebody who's not familiar with somebody speaking about their own needs and always agreeing all the time, that can feel scary. Oh, suddenly you don't want to spend time with me? What? What is this? Right. And so that also takes talking, which isn't a bad thing. Those are also natural parts of relationships. It's figuring each other out and taking that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can certainly relate. I mean, I remember growing up and there were so many friends that I had that were not Latina or Mexican, and the way that they could talk to their parents about what was okay or
Mhm.
what wasn't okay for them was just not a freedom that I felt. And I think it comes with this guilt that, especially if you're in the States as a first generation, that
Mhm.
your parents gave up everything to give you a better life. So it kind of feels like you're, not honoring them or leaving them in the dust if you're choosing to not conform to whatever it is that they need from you. So it's a
Mhm.
really interesting, feeling that sometimes you do recognize you need a little space. You want to be able to communicate that. But then that wrestling in your mind of like, well, am I, not honoring everything that they have done for me? But you
With
have
that, oh, I was just gonna, sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say, with that, I always think of, are we sowing seeds of love or are we sowing seeds of resentment? Because that's often where we can find ourselves in that situation as well. I'm doing all of this because my parents, they sacrificed so much, they did this. But at the end of the day, you're the one living your life and making your choices. And I want to have these full relationships with these people that are in love, not in resentment, right? So then I'm not going to my job and I'm like, oh, I'm working this job because my parents, they came here and I'm angry every time I'm with them, right? As opposed to, it is a hard decision to sort of pave your own path and to advocate for yourself and to start having those hard conversations. But also, we have a bit more connection to our authenticity and we lower the resentment because suddenly I'm not living with you in the driver's seat. I get to be in the driver's seat. So resentment versus love is always what I bring up. That's the motivation.
And what happens to someone that, chooses to do the quote unquote right thing and they push those feelings down, they push those feelings down and then they find themselves with all of this built up resentment. Like, is there a way to get past that and how do you do that with loved ones?
Oh, you're asking the big questions. Um, it's all a process, right? With resentment, it's not just this moment that we're dealing with, it's all of these other moments that have built up. It's a
Correct.
big pressure, right? And then what happens, let's just say, let's have an example of, let's say this person realizes everything that they did and they come to you, "I'm so sorry. I never meant to do this." But it's been years, right? Are you going to forgive them just like that? A lot of people would say, "Yeah," but then things would come up again. "Oh my gosh, there's that opportunity I missed because of you. Oh, there's that opportunity. I could have done this," right? There's a lot of unraveling here. A lot of our inner work with our family, it starts right here because while we feel that maybe they didn't advocate for ourselves in a certain way, it was us who didn't advocate for ourselves and maybe abandon ourselves first, which is really hard. It's hard to hear because maybe we didn't know any different. And now that we know differently, we get to do differently. I never say better because there's always something different going on. And we get to just try out different ways and see what works, especially as we gather new information.
Yeah. Is there a tip that you have for someone that is feeling themselves in that, kind of negative circle of resentment? Like, what is one actionable step that they can take to cut that out and make sure that they're coming from a place of love versus resentment?
It's the simple question of, am I do I have the capacity for this right now?
Mhm.
And starting there. When somebody asks you something, automatically for a lot of people, we want to say, yes, absolutely, right? One of my cousins will call me up, hey, can you help me do this? 99% of the time, I'm going to say, absolutely, yes. So even if it's an absolutely yes, I want you to take a second, take a breath, and say, okay, let me think for a minute. This is if as long as it's not an emergency, right? Ask yourself, do I have the capacity for this? And maybe not out loud. You can do that inside your head. Do I have the capacity for this today? Does it have to be today? Oh, I had a really long day, but I can go tomorrow. Hey, is it okay if we do it tomorrow? I'm going to drop off the kids and then I have some time. Is that okay? And we get to figure it out from there. But also, if you have a slammed week, then you checking in with yourself first, let me put it this way, you would never get into your car without checking to see how much gas you have in it. So
Mhm.
why are you doing that with you?
Wow, that's such a powerful analogy, and I love it. And I think as Latinos, we typically brush our personal feelings under the rug. And you're right, we're community first. So it's
Mhm.
always, helping out that cousin or sibling or friend. And you forget to check in. But I love the way you phrase it, saying, do I have the capacity for this today? It is so kind to yourself. It's not, blaming or shaming or should have or would have. It's just a very kind way of saying, it's okay to take a pause. So thank you for offering that. And I hope someone listening can put it to practice very soon.
The beauty of doing that as well is that without even realizing, right, you can be a better ancestor right now with these healing practices. We always think like, oh my gosh, I just posted something today about I have to solve all of the generational curses by myself. No, your inner healing sends so many ripple effects that you don't even see what rooms it goes into. When I live my life connected to my authenticity and I also take my own capacity into consideration, I'm giving somebody else permission to do that. And I don't even have to have contact with them. They're like, oh, you know what? She left the party early because she said she needs to go to sleep. I didn't know that was okay.
Mm.
And it opens a whole new door. You don't even know the influence that you have on somebody else. Everybody's an influencer.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you mentioned briefly you're being a better ancestor, which I think is at the crux of everything, right? That we feel
Mhm.
this guilt that we have to honor all the sacrifice, but actually taking a beat and honoring yourself makes you a better ancestor.
Yeah, and it's not self-care is not selfish. It is sustaining us because girl, especially with everything that's going on right now, there are lots of disheartening things happening and we're all aware of them, right? Everything going on with ICE and
Very true.
it's a crazy world right now. And so now more than ever checking on your own capacity is so important because I want to continue to be able to do the work that I do and to be present so that other people can feel safe in my presence. In order to do that, I got to check my gas tank first so
Mm,
that I can continue to fight the good fight.
yeah, absolutely. And you also shared another powerful analogy that I want to repeat back. We were talking about how we have this divide with our parents sometimes, right? Because we're just being raised differently, but we want to continue honoring them. And you mentioned your parents taught you how to drive, but now you have a car with all the bells and whistles that maybe they didn't get to have. So tell me a
Uh-huh.
little more about that.
I love a good metaphor because I know we chatted about that the other time where I was sort of explaining how that worked. And yeah, it's your parents give you the core values. We get a lot of good things from them. They teach us how to navigate the world in safety. Your brain and your nervous system, the one question it's always asking is, am I safe? And so your parents teach you the best way that they know. And that can also be like teaching you how to drive a car. They're teaching you how to drive this stick shift. All of the core things are going to be like maybe another car. But now maybe you have this new fancy electric car and you're like, they're similar, but my parents wouldn't know how to drive this car. I know how to drive that one. They don't know how to drive this one. And I can still be safe in this one. It's just I have to learn some other tricks. And so same core things there, but you get to now learn it in a new system. And it doesn't make it bad. It's just different.
Yeah. I love that. And you're still honoring everything your parents gave you, right? And I
Uh-huh.
love how you are very careful to not say it's better or, it's an improved version. It's different. And I think that that gives grace for a lot of things that we experience. We
Mm.
also talked about eldest daughters and how they over index in guilt and shame. Talk to me a little bit more about what you're seeing in your practice or, any observation that you have regarding our eldest daughters.
Mm. There's a lot of layers there. With guilt and shame, that was part of the inspiration for me to start my practice, because we have this common thread where it's like, oh, that feels familiar, right? And
Mhm.
that goes back to what is my motivation for doing some of the things that I do? Is it rooted in love? Is it rooted with some capacity to it? Or am I doing this out of guilt and shame? And often what is there is learned all the way back here. We learn that from when we're little,
Yeah.
right? So it is a lot of inner work to go and see, okay, where did this come from? And yes, I don't use the words better, but I also do want to highlight that when we're talking about this, we are not talking about situations of abuse. That's important for me to mention. Um, but with guilt and shame and children, especially eldest, who carry a lot, right? And a lot of them were, a lot of who I've worked with have been parentified, taken on those roles, especially as first generation. You don't have to be the eldest daughter necessarily to have taken on the role of translator, of the person just being more adult than a child that you would raise would be,
Totally.
right? But this was also out of necessity. It's not because anybody necessarily chose it on purpose for you. It's just sort of the way the cards fell. So, what I'm seeing a lot in my practice is we're learning how to have safe conversations with our own needs, maybe with that inner child. And saying, oh, yeah, I really did want to do that when I was younger, but I never did because there was no time. Oh, that feels silly. And people think that the opposite of trauma is no trauma, but the opposite of trauma is actually play. So
Mm.
I like to talk to people about, okay, what does play look like in your life? Maybe it does look like reaching back into things that you liked when you were younger. Maybe it looks like something different in adulthood. It's you dancing or going to a dance class, getting creative with finger paints, even though you're like, what's the point of that? That's the point. The point is that there's no point. It's not to be productive because I'm willing to bet that everything you do has to have some purpose to it outside of just pure joy. What is it that you're doing for just you? And what does that feel like? And when that happens, are you feeling guilty? Are you able to actually be present in it? Or are you thinking of the thousand other things that you got to do?
Yeah. That's so interesting because you are right. I think, seeing our parents work so hard, it's ingrained in you that that's what you're supposed to be doing, right? And it's
Mhm.
hard to stop and play. We don't allow ourselves that. And in our community, when we see people rest, it's because they're, so tired from an arduous day and crazy jobs that are hard on the body.
Mhm.
It's really interesting to explore play as an adult, right? And to see that as a way to connecting back to that child that maybe grew up in certain areas of life a little too quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Um, so I want to end our conversation. I think we, covered such great ground and so many really great um, things to think about for us that can maybe our conversation sow a seed for someone and they can explore or, pull at that thread a little bit more to get to know themselves, to build those bridges with their families. You gave us one tangible tip. Is there anything else that you would leave, our listeners with that is very tangible that they can do to immediately connect themselves and feel a little bit better?
It would be an affirmation. If you go on my media, every once in a while, I like to drop a self affirmation because how we talk to ourselves is so important. It's the longest relationship you're going to have on this earth. It's the one between you and you. And so, how we speak to ourselves is important. This affirmation I give to everyone, And it is, especially when you're thinking that, oh, how could I make that mistake? I should have done this. I should have done that. We get caught in this spiral of needing to be perfect and having this idea of that there was another way to live life that could only be perfect. And it's like, no, that's actually not realistic. It's this affirmation of, it makes sense that this is hard. I've never done this before. I'm still learning, and that's okay.
That's so beautiful. That's so kind. I know we were talking about being kind to ourselves as step
Mhm.
one, and I love that. Well, thank you so, so much for your time today. Where can our listeners find you if they want to learn a little bit more, if they want to, dig deeper into some of the topics that we talked about today?
Well, my name is Victoria Cortez. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am licensed in the state of California, and I work virtually with clients all over California. You can find me on firstgenfeeler.com, also on social media at firstgenfeeler. And if you want to email me, info@firstgenfeeler.com. I also do workshops, and you can find all of that on my website. And occasionally I'll do a virtual. I have a couple coming up in Fresno, California, and then sometimes I'm on other parts of California doing in-person workshops as well, just all centered around inner child healing and all that good stuff.
I love it. Well, thank you so, so much. And it was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.